I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com, and with us a real treat. The editor of the Solari report at Solari.com, and look at the cover. Who's who and what's up in the space-based economy. This is not some far wackadoodle out, far out thing that's going to happen 50 years into the future. It's happening now, and the person tracking it is Catherine Austin Fitts, who is a financial advisor. She used to manage a $300 billion portfolio or more at Housing and Urban Development, and she's on to talk about the space-based economy. But before we do that, we're going to talk about the economy here on Earth. So we're going to start and we're going to move up, and this is if there's no folks, there's no way we can get to everything in here. She talks about all the companies that are actually spending money on space. This is really very well done. I say this every time. I'm in no obligation to do it. She's talking about some special. She will talk about, you said in the pre-interview, a special deal you can get. I'll let you talk about that at the end. But I want to start with this. I want to start first, even before the economy. The Inspector General report last week. Here we have Obama and Hillary talking to each other with their own private emails and servers. They don't care about national security. They breached national security for a fact. Now that's a fact. They violated the Espionage Act, yes, Obama and Hillary Clinton, and yet we're still missing $21 trillion. And Dr. Mark Skidmore, who's an expert in public finance, a PhD, he just got a reply back from, the Inspector General on that end of the spectrum, their Inspector General, with completely redacted. So what's going on here? What is the battle royal going on?
Let me just start by asking you a theoretical question. If you were the president and the Secretary of State and you had to redirect $21 trillion disappearing from the federal government, or we know in 2015, let's use the 2015 numbers. So 6.5 trillion of undocumentable adjustments at DOD and a couple hundred million at HUD. So if you were redirecting and shuffling those money around as president and secretary of the state, wouldn't you want to do it outside of the government systems?
Sure. Yes. And that's right. And you brought this up before that in order, these people want to throw away the Constitution. And we don't need that. It's a bunch of old white guys. And and what we really need is the Constitution to bring back the rule of law. And we need to operate within the bounds.
If you take all the government assets and you move them out of the government surreptitiously and put them in another place, then the Constitution will be basically overseeing 2 cents, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at their private servers and email systems, I dare say they were probably about the concentration and control of cash flow. And as we can see from the 2015 financials, a lot of cash flow went missing during the Obama administration, including when Obama was president and Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State.
And what's going on with this Inspector General report? A lot of people want to see these people hang, but you're saying that there's a much bigger picture. Please explain.
There's a much bigger picture. I was part of the cleanup team that came in and cleaned up the first housing bubble in 89 and 90. And the reality is what the establishment tries to do is pick out a few people, get the crowd to hate them. They throw them to the crowd eats them, and meantime, the establishment makes off with their money. So what I said to you before is, do you want Hillary Clinton in jail, or do you want to get the $21 trillion back and make sure there's plenty of money for the pension funds or Social Security? I would rather fund Social Security and the pension funds than kill a few people.
Or imprison them. Can we get this money back? I mean, Dr. Mark Skidmore has told me he got, and it's on Solari.com too, so I'll put a link up for that too. He got public numbers back from the Inspector General that does the Department of Defense, and it's all every single number, every number is blacked out. You posted this on the Solari.com in a section up there, which I'll link to later. But what does that mean? Are we never getting this money back? Is this hey, we stole it fair and square? Go ahead.
In theory, you can get every dime of whatever is, because the number 21 trillion we know is not a reliable number. It comes from the U.S. government financial statements, and since they've refused to comply with any of the financial management laws, I would not say their financial statements are a reliable source. But the reality is, for whatever money has disappeared, whether it's 10 trillion or 20 trillion, you can assert jurisdiction over all the assets that were now financed with that money. So absolutely, we know, we know who was running the payment systems. We know who was running the bank accounts. Those banks have records, and you can assert jurisdiction over all of the assets created or financed. Now, will it happen? It's going to take a significant decision in the court of popular opinion that this is real, and it's time for us to assert adult supervision of all these assets.
They're not, the mainstream media is, wolf blitzer. We're not the enemy of the people. Yes, you are. Yes, you are, because you're either stupid or you're covering up for these weasels. And, back when I was a reporter on the mainstream media, I don't know, $21 missing trillion tagged by, from 98 to 2015, that's what we know about, tagged and packaged up with a PhD in economics at a major university, Dr. Mark Skidmore, is a pretty big story. But that's not a story to them. What happens if we don't get the money back?
Because the story is, how many journalists and media organizations can be purchased with $21 trillion?
I guess a lot.
I would say all of them. I think you could buy all the telecom companies. You could buy all the congressmen who let net neutrality get repealed. You could buy all the content providers. You could buy pretty much every reporter. If a reporter like Glenn Greenwald is giving you trouble, you just start a new media company and hire him and keep him busy for a year. You can pretty much hire any journalist, who's got a price. So you can hire just about everybody but you and me, and that's what makes us special.
Well, nobody's knocking on my door to hire me, because I think they know that I'm not going to play. I'm not going to do it. I mean, I got my own deal, and it's not,
Here's the thing. What we're watching is something which has had devastating consequences to the American taxpayer, because the American taxpayer is basically paying to build a data beast, which is a control infrastructure, which is harvesting and destroying them. So, the economic model is we're financing our own destruction. You can't let that keep on going. And if you're a member of the media who really cares about that and doesn't want to see it happen, I got started on all of this because I was watching what they were doing with private prisons. And if you read my Dylan Reed story, Dylan Reed and the Aristocracy of Stock Profits, basically the Dylan partners were making extraordinary amounts of money at the expense, not just of the people they're rounding up in prison, but of the taxpayers. They were putting a lot of innocent people in prison, but they were putting a lot of innocent taxpayers into tax prison to play the game.
That's right. They built the prisons, and they needed some criminals. So they got some criminals so they could harvest the taxpayers.
Well, but, when you drop SWAT teams into poor neighborhoods, round up innocent kids, and then pull the money on the public defender's office so that you can force them to cop a plea, I would not call those kids criminal. I would call them kids.
Yeah.
Who were basically right. It was a very dirty game.
I want to go back to Donald Trump. There's a quote in your report which is just amazing. I actually heard him say this. You should go to page 16 and read the Donald Trump quote. Now, I thought, I remember hearing him say this, and people must.
Yeah, that was a fascinating speech out in San Diego.
He was talking about, we have a military force. We should have a space force, basically. He's talking about space and how we're going to lead and how we are leading. And, America has twice as many satellites as Russia and China combined. But he gets it. He's not, people like to say he's a doofus and they make fun of his hair. I like his hair, and I'm not making fun of him. I think he's a smart guy.
Done a remarkable, Trump's a very smart guy, but the other thing I would say is Trump has done a remarkable job of educating the American people about the real deal. He's currently educating them that you have to make the cash flows on trade work. That's number one.
Yep.
There is such a thing as financial accountability. That's number one. But number two, he's making it clear that all these, different things are important. So he's saying, look, if we're going to stay dominant, we need to be successful in space. We need to have a space force. And P.S., we've got all these magical, mysterious weapons, and wink, wink, they've got something to do about space. It's really interesting because so much of the current plan of the Make America Great pullback behind the oceans really depend, Greg, on projecting power through space. So I always say the satellite lanes are the sea lanes of the 21st century. And that's why this competition in space is so very important. And if you look at the first quarter wrap up in the tables, we did tables of what are the publicly traded companies involved in space, both here, Europe, and in Asia. And then the private companies, we show the amount of venture capital and the companies that have been starting up. The startups are flying. It's very, very interesting. You don't get a sense of that, although for the first time Wall Street has started to cover space. Last year we saw big studies from Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, and some others, and we describe all of that in it. But this is something, if you want to understand the economy on planet Earth, you need to understand the economy in space, because space is increasingly going to be determining who wins and who loses on the ground.
And the good thing about this is that you just list the companies saying, hey, this is real, folks, because you can track the cash flows to the companies that are going into space. I mean, that's what people need to
investment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. When you look at the private equity investments that are going to space, what you realize is this is really happening. It's happening, the move into space and the rollout of AI and all of these other things it's moving much faster than even I expected. And as you know, I've expected it to move pretty fast. So it's moving faster. I don't know if you saw Elon Musk's warning earlier this year on AI and how fast it's moving.
Yes.
Our top story in the second quarter wrap up is going to be the AI invasion. We're going to spend a lot of time on it because it's going to have a very dramatic impact on making it possible for a few to centrally control and concentrate the wealth. JP Morgan just announced they're hiring 1,000 wealth advisors. And we saw the Wall Street Journal yesterday announce that the private equity and LBO firms are sitting on over $1 trillion in cash. Greg, where do you think that cash came from?
Maybe part of the missing 21 trillion. I don't know. I'm going to take a wild guess. Is that?
We remember the Pillsbury Doughboy. When you squeeze down in one place, it pops up in another place, right?
That's right. I want to talk.
What a surprise!
Well, your top story in this quarter, and there you've got 10 of them. So I'm just going to start with the top story in this story, but it's pretty amazing, and it has to do with all the space exploration and what's going on in the economies. Your top story, will you talk about it, please?
You're talking about the top story in the space-based economy. You're talking about the top stories in News Trends and Story.
Your top story of the year. Hold on, I'll get it right here. Hold on.
Oh, could the rape of Russia happen?
Yeah. That's it. I'm sorry.
And in fact, we're changing the name of that to the AI invasion because the rape of Russia was a very a much more simple process than is happening here. Because when you steal a small business, you can steal their revenues, you can steal their or put more into their expenses, and you can harvest their assets through the information systems and surveillance in much more complex ways. So the rape of Russia in the United States is going to be much more complex, and I think that's why both the repeal of the net neutrality rules combined with the rollout of 5G is going to be very scary when you add it to the load of regulatory and compliance that is going to be basically enforced. Think of this as the white collar equivalent of speed traps. The whole economy is going to have, white collar speed traps laid across it. It's interesting. I'm in the middle of an audit for my investment advisory company. And in the process of doing it, I was reading an SEC document that had estimates of what the 2013 cost of different personnel was. And so I took those numbers and applied it to the audit and discovered that so far this year I've spent more on the audit than we've had gross revenues.
Oh my
God. For the
God.
year. Our projected gross revenues for the year, we're going to spend more than that on the audit.
The audit's by what, the SEC? Who's the SEC?
No. It's the state regulator.
Oh, the state regulator. Oh, wow.
Right, but imagine spending more than 100% of your gross revenues on an audit that's not yet done. If you look at the amount of regulatory compliance, tax compliance that we all do, every year it goes up. And it's just going to, the more we systematize things into the cloud, the more it's going to go up.
You think Donald Trump is a good guy? I mean, he sits in the G7 meeting, and of course they put these. Cheryl Atkinson put this out. The leading, the picture where Merkel is sitting over the desk, and a moment later she's back laughing, and he's laughing, and but they know what's going on. I mean, they know what's going on. They must know what's going on with what Trump is trying to do. I mean, he says to all of them, America's the piggy bank that everybody wants to rob, and he says this is going to stop now. What are they going to say about that?
Well, but here's the reality. If you look at the Clinton pay for play network, my suspicion is that the way the global trade system was operating was the Americans were basically putting a lot of money into people's pockets and their friends' pockets personally. And the reality is, whatever's going on, I don't think Trump is doing that, or certainly not doing it to the same extent. And everybody's getting hurt. Everybody probably had big bets on how they were going to make money on the Paris Treaty going or TTP going. And so he's hurt a lot of personal pocketbooks in the leadership, and people are frustrated because they can't basically complain about that publicly.
Well,
they can't say,
yeah.
My personal net worth is going down and that's not fair. I think the politics of the establishment and the corruption of what was going on is getting mixed up with how we redesign the model for the 21st century. Because there's no doubt the trade and economic model has to change and change a lot. Trump is trying to turn the aircraft carrier before we hit the iceberg. And it's a very, very messy process. And I think part of it is, if you and I were going to turn the model, Greg, we'd want to get in the room and have an honest conversation. But there's so much criminal liability involved. Nobody can have an honest conversation, and it's making it very difficult. And it's one of the reasons, the absence of transparency. We're all choking on the absence of transparency, which is why I keep coming back to the importance of having independent media that you can trust. I mean, we have got to have honest conversations about what's going on. Trump has done more, I think, than any leadership around the world to try and inspire transparency, and he's taken enormous risks to do it. I give the guy credit.
Well, let's just, one of my pet peeves was this Iran deal, and I'm not anti-Iran. I wanted a real deal. And, now we know, and I've been harping on this, Catherine, that, from the Kerry State Department, they admitted nobody signed it. I know you like John Kerry, but that's a fraud.
Well, don't you think that Trump wants a real deal? It looks to me like he wants a real deal.
Of course he does. Not 5 C-130s with pallets of cash flying into Tehran. I mean, it wasn't a real deal, and here's how I know, okay? Here's how I know. You want to know how I know? We just had the G7. They said that
Calm down.
They said that if we backed out of this deal, we'd have nuclear war. Really? Okay, France, Germany, UK. Now's your time. You got the president in front of you. Are you going to make a statement about this? Oh, yeah, no, because we didn't sign it. And then we have a top advisor of the Iranians tweet out on the world record, we're going to disclose all the Western leaders who took bribes to get this deal done. It's a fraud. Your buddy John Kerry is a fraudster. He's a fraudster.
So
it's a fraud.
What can we do to get him? What can we do to get him to tweet that out?
I don't know. I'd love to start with jail time for everybody involved in it. That's a good start. They remove them from end your wealth. So anyway, listen.
Well,
this is the problem with this whole thing. We've been lied to. We're being lied to. That's what I hate about it. We're being lied to. You don't tell me that there's a damn deal and nobody signed it. Nobody, not even Iran.
Let me get back. Let me get back to the. I still sympathize with the reasons they wanted to deal.
Yeah, but they frauded it out. You don't take bribes if you try to do something noble. I don't take bribes to have you on. Okay? You don't pay me. I don't.
Greg, calm down. Wait. Calm down.
Okay.
Calm down.
Sorry.
We're.
I know I'm going crazy, but I can't help it. They're screwing us. They're screwing us. I get pissed about it. So I'm sorry. Back to you. You're the star.
Well, let's talk about who's screwing us. Because right now the establishment, I think, is doing a remarkably good job of sitting on the fights that might break out or the prosecution of the people who are guilty of taking big bribes, because they don't want to upset the reinvestment of the financial coup proceeds. What it looks like to me is we're repatriating a ton of operations in cash, and everybody's licking their chops. I told you, J.P. Morgan Chase is adding another 1,000 wealth advisors, and the private equity and LBO firms are sitting on $1 trillion of cash. They don't want to jeopardize the cooperation they need going forward to double down on their profits. So that's why I keep saying, forget about putting somebody in jail. Let's look at the money and talk about how we get that money back.
And so let's talk about how do we get that $21 trillion back? I mean, there's a lot of people with pensions that are going to get killed. We have this giant baby boom generation that is, I don't know, 10,000 a day, or how many people are leaving the workforce or whatever it is. It's a huge amount of people leaving the workforce on a daily basis, and they're thinking they're going to get, a pension, and they think they're going to get, everything's going to be fine. How do we get that $21 trillion back?
So here's how we could get it. The first thing you need, let's just talk about the first step. The first step is you need to win this discussion in the court of popular opinion. That means this year in the election, in the 2018 election, if 5% of the American people who go to the town hall meetings or meet with their congressman or get involved in any way in the election put forward the question, where's the money? Where is the 21 trillion missing? Why won't the federal government obey the laws related to financial management? Why do I have to pay my taxes if they won't obey the laws related to disclosure and financial management and producing financial statements? So that's number one. Get in the election and start to bring the consciousness up in the court of popular opinion, because you have to win this in the court of popular opinion before you can win it in the courts and the legislature. That's number one. The second thing is, whenever you talk to anybody at your pension fund, whenever you talk to anybody at Social Security, what you need to say to your pension fund trustees, why are you giving our real money to the U.S. government in exchange for treasuries, which are IOUs from ourselves, and that money's going out out of the back door? We want you as our fiduciary to start asking questions. All you need is for 1% of the pension fund trustees in this country to start asking questions. And boy, you're going to see a lot of things change. So the first thing that needs to happen is people need to understand that there is a problem and it's not going to go away. And we can connect the dots between the underfunding of our pension funds and the underfunding of Social Security and all the different policies that are raining down on us from the data beast and AI, with the money that's missing. So stop attacking us. Where's our money?
The Fed just raised interest rates. Obviously, the economy is not doing that great. I mean, it's doing better with Donald Trump, without question. But they're raising interest rates. And in the pre-interview, you said, he's raising interest rates because of the impending pension fund debacle. Explain.
Well, they're raising interest rates for a variety of ways. With a financial coup over, they're now sitting on a huge amount of money. So if you have private equity firms with $1 trillion of cash, they'd rather earn 2% than 0, right? But the other thing is you do need the pension funds to start earning money on their fixed income or cash balances. You do need the insurance companies to do it. And the reality is 0% interest rates have caused a huge misallocation of capital. Now, if you look, Greg, at interest rates, on the 10-year, we've only gone up about 100 basis points over the last year, maybe 25 basis points. On the 30-year, the yield curve right now is remarkably flat.
I think it's 12 or 13.
So it's very easy for the stock market. I shouldn't say very easy, but it's easy enough for the stock market to digest those kinds of changes. Now, again, it's going to squeeze the small business guy. He's already going to be squeezed big time by the repeal of net neutrality, 5G, all these other things we're talking about. So I'm not saying it's all going to be hunky-dory, but if you look at the misallocation of capital that's occurred from 0% interest rates, it's really criminal. So I think this is a good thing.
Okay. You think the 5G? You mentioned the 5G, and people have written me about it saying you should talk about 5G. And I know you know about it. Could you pretty much sum up what 5G is? They say it could cause cancer. They say it's going to be able to track everybody. They say it's going to be so onerous and so terrible. Could you explain 5G and straighten me out and everybody else on it too, why it is not such a great idea?
I'm not a 5G expert, but I've had some very excellent people on the Solaire Report, and I really encourage you to go listen to the interviews we've done. What 5G is going to do is it's going to mean much higher download speeds, much higher speeds, much more capacity. To get that going, you're going to put up small towers all over the place. They're going to significantly increase the presence of towers all over the country, and there are plans also around the world to project it downward from satellites as well, I'm told. And so what this is going to do dramatically increase EMF radiation. And when you combine that, Greg, with other forms of environmental pollution that people are struggling with, the people I trust say that this is going to really be very damaging to immune systems, cause lots of, we're really in for brain tumors to the extent that people hold devices near their body or near their head. If you hold your phone up to the ear, etc.
Yeah.
So, and my concern, of course, is that they're going to make the surveillance unbelievably 24/7 invasive. They're trying to get all of this stuff into your home, into your life, into every one of your smart appliances. And let me tell you something, it's funny, when you look at the stories of net neutrality on the internet, they say it gives the telecommunications company the ability to speed up or slow down your communication or website. Oh no, it's far worse than that. They can do it at a very microscopic level. So let's say they don't like a piece of your internet that hits at 23 minutes. Suddenly, bam, that part slows down. People get frustrated. They leave. They never hear it. So this is going to roll out, in my opinion. The speed up, slow down is going to be very microscopic. And this is how censorship is going to work. You're turning over the internet between this and all sorts of other data rules and laws to the big guys who are free to act above the law, have the money to fight and do a variety of things. And you're really going to bring on war for the little guys. And you're going to do it at a time when small business is the source of jobs. So if small business goes away, you're talking about wiping out enormous amounts of employment and an enormous amount of family wealth.
So Trump should go back and put net neutrality back in place. He should try to put net neutrality
Absolutely.
to make absolutely. So it would
Absolutely.
help. It will help the little guy.
You'll hear all these Republican commentators say, and conservative commentators say, oh, this is great because now you'll be able to decide it in a free market. That's ridiculous. You don't create a bunch of sort of monopolistic telecommunication companies who can outpower anybody given their resources and then give them the ability to just do whatever they want in terms of slow down, speed up, censor. So on February 23rd, when our website went down under highly suspicious circumstances, we found ourselves blocked by Google, Yahoo, and AT&T for no reason. We communicated with Google and Yahoo. We went through their process, and suddenly their blocks lifted. We've tried to communicate for months with AT&T. We've given up. I published a public request providing the documentation to all my subscribers and saying, I cannot communicate through an AT&T or related domain. And if you want to subscribe to the Salary Report, if you go to subscribe to the Salary Report, we request that you not subscribe with an AT&T email address because we have reason to believe we can't communicate with you. So let me tell you what this is important. It means an ISP can sign up a customer, proceed to block email that customer wants to get and request and not tell their customer. Because I've reviewed this with our attorneys, there's nothing we can do. They say with the repeal of the rules promulgated to implement net neutrality, it's all perfectly legal.
Listen, I've had some problems. I tell people all the time, look in your spam box, and I thank people, and I answer people, and they, oh, sure enough, your thank you was in my spam box. Because I don't want people to think that if they donate, which is not that great of a... But the people that do, I appreciate it.
Almost all the independent media that I request to get email from, I can't get it. It goes into our server spam filter. It goes into our spam filter. I have for years tried to sign up for John Rappaport's mailing list. It doesn't even show up in my spam filter or my junk filter. It doesn't even make it that far. It was really interesting. I had a wonderful executive from AT&T contact me, and he said, I listened to Greg Hunter. I love Greg Hunter's show. I heard about all of this. He said, we at AT&T can build a new website for you and make everything, fix everything. And I said, well, can you lift the AT&T block? And he went into the internal system where they show people who violate spam rules and are blocked. And he sent me a picture of Solari, and he said, you're not blocked. There's no block on you at AT&T. And I said, well, apparently you have a super secret block that you don't know about. It's kind of funny.
I want to end with one thing about there is and I didn't bring this up in my weekly news wrap up, but I thought about this later. There's a full-blown war going on with Donald Trump and the deep state and the New World Order, Luciferian, whatever you want to call it. And they're trying to kill him. They're trying to start a war. You talked about false flags in your, and I believe they are real. I don't know. There's plenty of false flags. They want to take our guns. They want to disarm us. They have to do that, which makes me even more adamant that they're not going to do that. I don't want them to do that. I believe in the Constitution. As to your point, I believe in all the amendments and everything with the Constitution. But there's a full-blown war going on. You see Bill Maher, who's a puppet, I think, of the deep state, saying he's rooting for a economic crash. I mean, Bill Maher, all of a sudden you're talking about the economy like you know something. And then you have George Soros talking about how there could be another financial calamity. This is back in the end of May, and everything's gone wrong. And Christine Lagarde, just most recently, talking about this just last week, talking about dark clouds gathering in the trade war. Could they crash the economy? Is that a page in their playbook? And do you think they're getting ready to try to do it?
I don't see any plan. I think the establishment, the global establishment, is trying, or certainly the American establishment is trying to sort of engineer a reset of the global system. And
when you say reset, you're talking about debt reset. Talking about a debt reset.
A debt reset and a currency reset. So okay. I think there's a real push. One of the reasons you want to get the repeal and net neutrality and 5G rolling out is because you want to go to a digital currency. And I think the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency experiment is really a prototype to test and figure out how to do that. But the infrastructure and hardware is not in place yet to do that. But they want 7 billion people, in a cashless society with digital currencies. That's the ultimate control, and that's what everybody's moving and pushing for. So, and with that, you're.
There we go.
Hey, funny how that happened.
Yeah, funny how that happened. Okay.
Funny how that happened.
Okay. So I've been working the last few minutes to try to get Catherine Austin Fitz back because she's talking about 5G and in AI, which is that she was talking about. And you're back. It's funny how that happened, right? Right? They just cut you off right there. What were you saying? What were you saying about AI before you were so mysteriously cut off? About AI.
Well, so let me step back. The establishment has stolen $50 trillion plus.
Yeah.
And they want to keep it and they want to reinvest it in the space-based economy and not have to give it back to the pension funds. And one of the most important techniques they're going to use to do that is basically with digital control, both of the currency as well as the systems that do surveillance and control. So if we can get 7 billion people on smartphones and 5G coming in from satellites or land, either way you do it, Greg, and everybody has a digital currency, and if they don't behave, you can turn off their currency. So, we're talking about ways of controlling people through the digital systems, which are very, very invasive. To my amazement, The Economist just had a big article talking about the levels of surveillance now in China and warning that this is very dangerous. You're even seeing the establishment start to realize, they're going to get included in all this control.
Yeah.
So if you look at a lot of the policies going on in the United States, whether it's the effort to bring in guns or the effort to force things into cashless, those who are centralizing control of the economy and are sitting on all that cash that they want to reinvest in the United States, they want to make sure they have control because they want to make sure when they invest that money, it makes their wealth go up and not just the general population's wealth go up. And they don't want to have to refund the monies back into the pension funds or Social Security. They want to be able to say, well, Greg, all the money's gone and, we spent too much money and we didn't balance the books, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is what this is about. This is about who's going to allocate what resources there, and are they going to be in a position to continue to harvest and drain the American taxpayer?
And what people need to know is what's going on. And I wanted to ask you about one thing you were talking about too, and before you talked about this, your bigger point. Are they going to try to crash the economy to try to throw Donald Trump out and put in, a Hillary Clinton or some other weasel like Obama or some other person that'll take orders and not make America great again, but make the New World Order even richer and nastier and stinkier than it already is? Are they going to try to crash the economy? Is George Soros tipping us off that they're going to crash the economy?
Well, I don't see a broad-based move by the American establishment to crash the economy. I do see more win-lose, competition around the world. I mean, that's part of what we saw come out of the G7 meeting. And so the tensions between the Russians and the Chinese and Europe and the United States are serious and more than I think is wise. So I think it would behoove both Europe and America to do, to find a way to get into a win-win kind of relationship, because I think this is a dangerous situation. And I'll be blunt, there are people who really want war with Russia, and it's a very bad idea, Greg. I mean, it's a very bad idea. So, if anything, I would love to see the tensions calm down between Europe and America. But part of it is going to take changes in the leadership and the various establishments to settle their disagreements. Right now, you have enormous tension between the people who led the financial coup and the people who want to reinvest the proceeds. And that's what this is a debate is about. Who's going to take the fall for stealing $50 trillion? Are they going to have to give any money back? And where is the money going to be reinvested? And the one thing I can assure you in all of that is a big chunk is going to be reinvested in space no matter what happens with the fighting.
And Donald Trump is probably the guy that's going to say, okay, let's make this equitable. Yeah, we have to go ahead and go forward into space, but we can't rob everybody. Is that him? Is that what he's going to do?
Here's what I think. I think Trump is offended by the extent to which productive people in America have been harmed. I think he really personally deeply is offended by the waste. I think he's a businessman, and he cares about productivity, and he cares about people who are productive. And I think what he was, I don't know if you saw this, one of the top stories so far of the year, one of the Marine generals, General Neller, was testifying in front of Congress, and they were talking about his job as recruiting, and he was talking about the recruiting challenges. And what he pointed out was that 70% of American children in the ages eligible to be recruited, and young people, are not eligible for Marine recruitment because they cannot meet basic standards of physical, moral, or emotional criteria.
Wow.
So they have to recruit from 30% of the young people. So you're talking about a debasement of human beings and our children, which is frightening. And I think Donald Trump sees that, and he sees the harm done to the productivity of the American people or of our young people, and he finds it appalling. I think that's why he won. He communicated that very, very successfly. I was at a Trump rally. I heard it, saw it. I think he's sincere. Good.
And finally, I just want to slip this in. I would think that it'd be great use for silver and gold, physical silver and gold, in the space-based economy. Are you bullish on silver and gold? Do you think people should hold it? I know you always say to have enough money to bribe the guards. Well, in space, the guards at the border is going to be pretty much worthless. Right, so are you bullish on gold and silver? Just your quick thoughts.
I am long-term bullish on gold and silver. I'm not sure. I don't think it's going to be a spectacular year for gold and silver. It was good year last year. I don't think it's going to be a spectacular year this year for gold and silver. But I do think gold and silver is going to be, and sound money is very, very important. I think a lot of people in the establishment, now that they've stolen the $50 trillion, would love to get to sound money because that helps them keep the $50 trillion. So I'm not so excited when they talk about sound money, but I think gold and silver are a very, very important part of any family wealth and family assets.
And that from a extraordinarily intelligent money advisor and somebody that's managed hundreds of billions of dollars. So, Catherine Austin Fitz. Oh, I want to talk. You have a special deal for people for the Solari.
Right.
Listen, folks. We only got a fraction of. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff in here. I mean, it's
well, I'll tell you what.
But anyway, tell me about your deal. Tell me about your people can get a deal.
So this wrap up is marvelous in that it has these complete tables on the web presentation and in the hard copy of all the companies involved in space, including all the private. So, and they're divided according to the markets where they're traded, what's traded on the U.S. market, what's traded on the European markets, and what's traded on Asia. We have a promotion, Greg. You can subscribe all digital or all digital and print, but we have a special promotion. If you subscribe now for the digital, we'll give you the hard copy on the first quarter wrap up for free. So it's a very nice, that goes for a value of $30. It's a very nice discount or sort of free thing on your annual subscription, and you can just click on the homepage. You'll see the picture of the cover. You just click and go to the store and subscribe. We'd love to have you.
And well,
We
listen,
love our subscribers.
and just so people know, you pay me nothing, and I wouldn't take it. And if I did, I'd have to disclose it. You pay. I have you on because I think you're good, and I think what you have to say is good. And listen, folks. I mean, if you took this for the weekend and read it all, you would pretty much know what was going on, and your eyes would be open to things that I didn't know that. I mean, when I read this,
Right, and I should just say, the whole goal of the wrap-ups is to make sure that our subscribers can be unbelievably knowledgeable about what's going on, and from the point of view of the real deal, with very little of their time. It's a great effort to synthesize quarterly, the news and what's going on that's important to you, so that you have what you need to sort of manage your risk and navigate the world, but it doesn't take you forever to figure it out. So it's all designed to keep really busy people current and do it in an enjoyable way.
very slick, very well done way. The information is top notch, and then the way it's presented is also very slick. And it's as good as Time Magazine or U.S. News and World or any of those things, except that you have real content. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, just that one little thing in there.
Just like you.
Yeah. Anyway, listen, Kath and Austin Fitz of Solari.com. You are the publisher of the Solari Report, as it says right here. It's just a great publication, and you put out a lot of information to people. And thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Thank you, Greg. It's always a pleasure. You have a wonderful day.
You too.